at that I took a 3 month sabbatical and traveled. I went to 5 countries. Like I really enjoyed life. And then I knew when I went back that I wouldn't stay for long. And so then it was just my plan to leave corporate. Like, and I knew I wanted to be my own boss. I knew I wanted to do my own thing. And I knew that there was something greater and better for me. And so then it was just planning my exit.
Welcome to Innovator Tribe Outside the Bubble,
a show about bridging the gap between the inspiration of an idea to the creation of a product. What's up, Toye?
What's up, Ahmad? How's it going, man?
Man, life is good. 2017 is rocking and rolling, bro.
I know, right? I think, the beginning of this year has definitely been an omen of very good things to come this year.
Yeah, and we got a exciting show ahead of us today. I mean, like shout out to all the people who graduated from FAMU. We're representing one of your own on this episode,
Yes, Renita Bryant, who literally started her first business while she was a student at Florida A&M University, FAMU. What is it, the Rattlers?
Man, I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm not even going to act like I know.
You're just gonna leave me hanging like that? Okay.
I think
hopefully I didn't get it wrong. If I did, I apologize automatically. I didn't go to HBCU, so forgive me.
we didn't. But hey, I went to your parties before. Definitely.
So that's a whole nother subject right there.
Different podcast.
But Renita Bryant, man, just a force to be reckoned with. In this podcast, in this episode, I should say, she highlights some very key points. One of them, and I think this is probably one of the most important parts, was as an entrepreneur, really having the understanding of what your why and your motivation is. That was definitely one of the key things I really enjoyed about this podcast.
Renita too, she's the real deal. She has 2 companies going at the same time. She has Fortune 100 companies like Procter and Gamble. It's one of her clients for her businesses. So it's just you'll hear insights from a true innovator, a true woman who's killing the game within business and entrepreneurship in Atlanta. It's so many gems were dropped in this.
So many gems. She talks about the importance of setting up a partnership agreement, and she actually goes into detail about how that partnership agreement allowed her to start the company with the founder and eventually end up kind of going out on her own. And this partnership agreement literally allowed her to do that without any qualms. And she also talks about having a walkaway number, which is honestly the first time I actually heard about that. And I think the walkaway number is something that I actually had to start thinking about myself after we recorded the podcast. I was like, oh wow, the walkaway number. That's definitely something that I think every entrepreneur should definitely think about as they build their idea into a product or a company.
Oh man, but we can't forget about how this episode is definitely for the people who got a nice salary, you know about the bonus that you're gonna get, but you still have that entrepreneurship drive in you, that burning desire to build your own business. She breaks down that transition because she had that really good corporate job and leveraged that into her entrepreneur endeavors today. So you'll hear the story of how she made that transition smooth for herself through this episode. So really a lot of gems about that as well. Yeah,
definitely. So let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, make sure you subscribe.
How many stars are we going to rate Toye?
5 stars.
5 stars. All right. Good. Yeah. Because that really helps, if you like the show, if you like this episode, and if you've realized that it's helping you and you want it to help other people, then just go ahead and drop 5 stars because that's going to help other people, listen to it too and get that good insight so that we can be all bridging the gap between the inspiration of idea to the creation of a product.
With that being said, let's get into it.
Let's get it.
Cool breeze.
Today we're here with Renita Bryant. She is the founder of SIGHTSSET and then also MyndMatters Publishing. And I'm really excited to have her here on the call today just because of this knowing her personal story on how both of these companies have came into the creation within the past like three plus years. I'm not sure. I'm confident that that Renita will be dropping a lot of gems just for our listeners just to take away with and figure out how to move forward with their ideas and ventures that they want to launch and create. So with that, I want to just talk about how we met a little bit because it's a personal story and I think it's worthwhile. So yeah, Renita, like honestly, like it was through you're dating my fraternity brother in Atlanta.
Yes.
So, I was when I was living in Atlanta, it was before the time that I really got into the technology space or I was flirting with the idea of starting a business and getting into entrepreneurship. And Q, my fraternity brother, he was always talking about how you guys met and you were starting your business with SIGHTSSET. And then like a year passed by, and then I think I ran into you guys during 4th of July, and he was just sharing all these accolades, and I saw the Facebook post that he made about some of your accomplishments with SIGHTSSET and MyndMatters, and I was just like, man, this like Renita's out here like getting it. She's like really, really successful, like entrepreneur. Like I was just like, man, I was that was just in the back of my head. And like at this point, I made the transition into the technology space. And the reason I say that is because market research. I know SIGHTSSET is all about this market research,
Yes.
and that's one of the key things within my field within product management is just that market research component of it. And so like I was at this point where I was like, you know what, I kind of want to do some like moonlighting with like consulting and things of that nature on the side. And so like Q was like, you need to reach out to Renita, like she can, you know, give you the script. And I made a call, and honestly like you like broke it down for me. It's like so many great resources that she shared, and it kind of shifted a little bit into this podcast, but I still have like that aspiration to, you know, break away, do some consulting too. But I think this is like probably the first portion of that journey. But yeah, like I love this, like the story of like how that like I was like following your progression with, you know, SIGHTSSET and MyndMatters like in the background, and this following the progression of it. And so I've always been in awe of like the way you took the tenacity and made it happen.
Oh, I appreciate that. Wow. Like you're right. So just so you know, I paid Quentin to say those things. You know, so I see that like I'm getting a great ROI, right? No, it's just it's interesting because, you know, you have somebody that's been there that kind of sees when I was in corporate and has seen the journey from me being in this corporate career where everybody is saying, why would you leave? You know, why would you leave the comfort and stability? And it's the large global company, one of the top marketing companies in the world. And so why would you leave that and the comfort of that to go and start your own thing, right? And so it's been great because having certain friends there, having him there, having people there that have seen that journey. And, you know, a lot of times you are afraid you're going to fall on your face. You're afraid that what you've had in your mind and your vision, you know, may not come true. And so to actually have that start to materialize has been great. And, you know, our conversation, like meeting you, I remember that first conversation and him actually telling me about you before we ever talked, and what, you know, some of the things that you were planning and you were toying with, some of the ideas. And so when we finally got on the call not too long ago and really talked, I was like, I just want to help as much as possible. Like that's the thing, when you go through it, you just really and talk to people and say, hey, these are the things to look out for. But there's some great moments in entrepreneurship, and you want to make sure that people are aware of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And one thing I find very interesting about just entrepreneurs in general is, you know, when you meet an entrepreneur and you recognize they're kind of either at the beginning of their entrepreneurship journey, or you recognize, wow, like I know what this person was doing before, and I know where they are now. It makes you definitely appreciate not only that person, because you understand, you know, the hard work that it takes to get to a certain point. And I think that's exactly why, you know, me and Mod, you know, really wanted to kind of create a podcast and a community around just being able to share, these entrepreneurship journeys. And we definitely appreciate you coming on to share your story today. And I think this actually can lead us into our next question, because, me personally and Ahmad, we always kind of have conversations about, when you're going to go into that investor pitch, or you're about to go into, one of those big meetings, you really have to get into a certain mind state, the zone. That's what we like to call it. You get in the zone. Is there a particular hip hop song that you like to listen to before you go into any of those big meetings that you have with a client, or, investor meetings?
So, because it's funny, the reason I'm laughing is because a lot of let's say you say hip hop songs, right? A lot of the music has a lot of profanity, or some of the language can be vulgar. So there are people that know me that would be shocked that that's even something that I listen to. Not necessarily because I try to portray myself a different way, just because it's like, they just probably wouldn't put me in the same sentence with gangster rap. But it's funny. Like, I like Bring 'Em Out. I'm from Georgia. I'm a big T.I. fan. So I'm a really big fan of Bring 'Em Out. I like that. I actually like the song. It's funny. I like Georgia by Ludacris. Like, it's a few people on the track, right? But I think it's just one of those things. Like, when I hear the bass drop, and again, I'm a Southern girl. I'm from Georgia. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. When I hear the beat drop, I feel it in my spirit. So it's things that, like, those songs kind of just make me feel like, okay, you're going out there, you're about to win this. You know what I mean? You have what it takes in you. And there's, you can listen to songs that are inspiring, that are motivational. I like a little Katy Perry. I like Roar, which isn't hip hop, but clearly, like, it's something about that song that just makes me feel like I am invincible. I can do all things and be all things, right? So, I mean, there's music like that I like to put in my spirit, before I'm about to go in but sometimes it's even the quiet and the stillness. Sometimes it's not actually listening, having something come in that's from the outside that's giving those words to you, but it's actually you having to tell those words to yourself. Because as an entrepreneur, you struggle. Like, you deal with fear, you deal with the imposter syndrome, you deal with, can I do this? Can I, am I the right person for this job? I'm going in asking these people to give me this contract and give me this money. Am I, do I know enough? Have I learned enough? Have I had enough experiences? And so, sometimes you don't need an outside voice singing to you. You need your own voice saying, you can do this. You have enough. You have enough of what it takes, you know what I mean, to win.
Sometimes not even kind of like an outside kind of cheerleader, if you will, that song kind of, cheering you on, but sometimes it's kind of that internal reflection. I think it's really even just meditation. If you want to kind of, put a word on it, just really just meditating on that stillness. I think that's a very great point.
Yeah, it's important. It's because you'll have a lot of moments that, depending on what type of business you start, you have moments where you can feel alone and you can feel isolated and you can feel like, everything's on your shoulders. And so being able to train that voice, or being able to respect and appreciate that silence and that stillness, and being able to find your center. And I know to some people it sounds hokey, but it's like being able to find that and being able to appreciate that and know what to do in those moments becomes very important, so that you don't lose your mind or start to feel disconnected and detached, and the wrong things start to happen, and those fears start to overcome you. Because a lot of times you get paralyzed if you don't know how to manage that fear and that quiet.
Oh man, that leads us like perfectly into our next question. You recently tweeted on SIGHTSSET that strategy execution is not a moment in time, it's thousands of moments across time. And I kind of want to explore that in a little bit about as it relates to your entrepreneurial journey. And you mentioned that you started a hip hop talent agency, like HipHop Enterprises, back in the day.
Yes.
Was that the start of your entrepreneurial journey? Can you give us that backstory?
So that's interesting. Yeah, man, that was a long time ago. So when I was I graduated from Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. And so one of my classmates and I, and Corey Scott, we decided, we were going to start this business that I don't know why we necessarily, I don't know what happened in terms of, if it was just one night, we were just laughing and joking because we were just friends. We took a couple of classes together. And so I know that there was homecoming coming up and there was a talent show and there were going to be all these events. And so we started thinking about, what could we do? And we'd interned together. And he was from Maryland, from, I want to say, Silver Springs. And I'd interned with Oracle in Northern Virginia. And so we had gotten together that summer and decided, leading up into that next year, we wanted to start a business. So we put it together. We're going to start HipHop Enterprises. We meet and talk about it. And the whole thing was to manage talent. So we thought about opportunities for us to leverage that talent, like to actually get them gigs, so to speak, right? When we were back at FAM and back in on campus. But then we also were thinking about how to leverage that, how to get jobs outside of campus. And so the whole thing was we were both interested in music. We were both interested in entertainment. We liked the idea of business management. We thought there was, there's a lot of opportunity in it. And so it was interesting. We went into a mode where we were interviewing and we were, we had casting calls, like we were doing the talent for like the homecoming talent show. And we were the ones that like casting people to get them to see who was going to be on stage or not. And, for different performances. And actually it was for Be Out Day. So we have this event annually at FAM called Be Out Day, where it's like a large, like talent and people are performing and there are vendors there and it's huge. They have sponsors. And so we were working with the people that were leading Be Out Day and doing some of the homecoming stuff. And because we weren't actually recruiting talent for homecoming, we were recruiting talent for Be Out Day. And what we were able to do is after we found talent, we were able to put some of them on and get them connected to homecoming to perform in the talent showcase. And so we loved it. It was great, but it didn't last for more than, I think we did it for maybe a year. And we just we started having to complete other internships and we kept going in our business program and we just went in different directions. But it was just interesting.
That's awesome.
It was fun.
That's awesome because I feel like that's a great story because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs kind of have a similar story where they, recognize a need or an opportunity, kind of early on and they're like, okay, let's I think this might work. Let's try it out. Let's see what we can do with it. And they hit on something, but, kind of due to, what they think they should be kind of, what path they think they should be going on. They kind of just, put that one success to the side instead of, kind of continuing on and pursuing that opportunity. But the one thing I always notice is that, typically once you kind of get that first bug, you always kind of come back to it. Right. You always kind of come back to entrepreneurship and you always kind of like, let me try something else. Right. That's a great story. So after that, you obviously, you kind of, I guess you get back into the corporate world, right?
Yes. My program was one where you completed internships. But then after I graduated, I went to work for a large, biopharmaceutical company that I'd also interned for. And so I went into corporate. And, you get into the corporate, every day, like the daily tasks and everything that you're doing. And you're in that mindset. You want to excel. You want to succeed. I'm an overachiever. So of course I want to do my best while I was there, made great relationships. But you're right, that entrepreneurial bug still stays within you, right? So it never goes away. There's always that feeling of, am I doing everything that I want to do and achieve? And I'm one of those people that believes that, you only get one life. As far as we know, as far as I know right now in the state that I'm in, all I know is that I've been granted this one life. I don't know what happens after that, right? So while I'm here, try to make the most of it and try to do the best with what time I have. And I think over time, when I first got out of college, I knew it and understood it, but then life happens. You keep going and you keep believing. And I have this master's degree. I have all this education. I have, people in my family believing that there's a path for me. And so I went from that company. I ended up recognizing that I wasn't necessarily being fulfilled there. And I went to a company just as large, $85 billion global company. And I moved to Ohio. And even just in leaving Pennsylvania, moving to Ohio, it was I thought that I was going to kind of quiet the voices in my head that were saying, okay, is this really enough for you? Is this really what you want? And instead, I put myself in a different situation where I was still performing well. I was still achieving. I was still doing great work. but I wasn't really giving in to those other things, those other desires that I had. So in 2000, I left the first company in 2008. At the end of 2008, I took like a mini little time off for a few months and traveled, hung out with my sister and some friends. And then I started with the new company in January of 2009. And so then I worked there for a few years, but it kept coming up. I kept feeling it, right? I knew something was missing. And so around March, not March, the summer of 2013, I actually started MyndMatters. Like I launched MyndMatters first, even though most people don't know that. I had launched that while I was in Ohio in corporate, and it was really a desire to publish my own book. I had been writing. I started writing in Pennsylvania. I knew that I wanted to publish or write books, and so I knew about the self-publishing buzz and the whole ability to write and create and publish yourself. So I started the company to really publish my own works and get my stuff out there, and then I realized after I kind of did that, I took a sabbatical at that company. I took a 3-month sabbatical and traveled. I went to 5 countries. Like I really enjoyed life. And then I knew when I went back that I wouldn't stay for long. And so then it was just my plan to leave corporate. And I knew I wanted to be my own boss. I knew I wanted to do my own thing. And I knew that there was something greater and better for me. And so then it was just planning my exit.
When I hear that, that sounds like that cultivation period in one's life when they're embarking on that big step that's going to be a risk taking. And while we're in that cultivation period, we're on paper it looks good because we have the corporate job, we're getting really good experience. Our family, they're bragging about us, about like, oh, you can't believe what my baby doing. Like it's like all of that. It's like all that going on, but that desire is in there to make that next step. But you just got to go through that process in preparation before you take that step. And you mentioned that MyndMatters was the first business that you launched that first. But was it the desire of like I think it was some of your poetry that you wanted to get published? Was it the desire of getting that published that sparked the publishing company? When did you know to pull the trigger to actually like make it official company?
While I was in Pennsylvania, I lived in Philadelphia. While I was in Philadelphia, I submitted some poems for a few things. So I was writing poetry. I've been writing poetry since I was like 7. That was just always something that I used to do. So that's what I always thought my first book was going to be, was, a collection of poetry or some essays. And so when I came over to Ohio, when I moved over to Ohio and started working at that company, I brought the poems with me. I brought the desire to write with me. And it really was, and I don't know how much you guys get into this on the show, right? But it was really life circumstances. I had been in a relationship where I was engaged and I ended up deciding not to move forward. I pulled back personally. I was kind of doing some self-evaluation just in terms of, again, it was all about what I wanted for my overall life. And so I think that's a piece of it. Like it wasn't that I can compartmentalize starting a business or compartmentalize my writing or compartmentalize my corporate job, or like all of these things for me were holistic. It was all a part of my life, all a part of that opportunity that I was given and that I was granted just to live every day. And so I made some decisions then in terms of I wanted to, I moved to a different city. I wanted to kind of get a fresh start in certain ways. And I just decided like, hey, I'm procrastinating. Like it was interesting. I think maybe Toye mentioned it, but it's that moment sometimes where it hits you like you already have that bug, but it was like a light bulb went off and just was saying, what are you doing? It was just that, what are you doing kind of light bulb. And I kept, how you sometimes tell yourself, you give yourself the reasons why, we also known as excuses. We say like, it's like, oh, well, why haven't you, you want to publish this book? Because I started writing. So I also, my mom had passed away. So I've been writing this novella. And so that was kind of loosely based on some of my reality and in terms of my feelings, not necessarily always the storyline. And so that's once I kind of got to a point of it being done. And I thought, everybody was asking, well, when are you going to release the book? And I kept going, I don't know. I don't know if it's finished. So it was easy. I kept just giving I think I should add another chapter. Well, I think I need to explore this concept, and I kept giving reasons or excuses as to why I wasn't doing it. And finally, at that stage in my life, it was you have to, I mean, there's no other excuse. The story is done. Where you are is done. So, I mean, at that moment I just pulled the trigger.
There's something that, I think is very important. And I feel like, especially for our audience, understanding what led to that first steps. And you talked about a couple of different things. You talked about things going on, in your personal life, things going on professionally. And it seems, and, correct me if I'm, but it seems like you're really kind of looking to, take control of your future, right?
Yes.
And I can definitely relate to that, because I feel like it's a matter of like, you kind of, you go to school, you get the master's degree, you're getting closer to that, 2.5 kids and a white picket fence. And you start to kind of analyze like, is this really what is going to make me happy? And you start, and it becomes kind of like a self-reflection where you kind of see your future and you're like, this is not what I want for my future. And you decide to kind of take control and be like, okay, you know what? I know I've checked all these different boxes in my life, and, I'm quote unquote successful, but sometimes it's kind of either reflection, I don't feel successful, or I just know this success is not success for me. Right. So my question is, at what point did you decide to kind of just take control and just do it? You're like, what was that catalyst?
Well, I think it was, I mean, you kind of addressed it. It was really, it's the mindset shift. And I actually, a friend and I, a fellow entrepreneur and business owner, we give trainings that talk about how to conquer your mindset, right? And how to make that shift. And that's what it was. Like enough endings had happened, whether it was people, losing life, or whether it was relationships, or whether it was in my career, recognizing that I had reached a certain point and recognizing that, it wasn't going to fulfill me in the same way that it used to. I got to a point of recognizing that either it had come to an end of living a life that others either had created for me, or the life that I created for myself based on assumptions of what that life should look like. And so once I reached that point of recognizing this is over, like I'm no longer interested in living in that box again, even that the box that I created for myself, that's when it happens. And sometimes I think we're waiting for that big, epiphany. We're waiting for that moment where it's almost like a magic trick. You're waiting for the glass to like just, lift itself from the countertop to say, this is the moment, but it's like, sometimes it's less, it's a little bit, it's more subtle. It's not that big light bulb. It's a small flicker. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know. I mean, it's not it's not that huge moment. It is just because you have to have that resolve right within yourself. You have to just know that you know that you know. And I don't think it's necessarily certainty of success or anything like that, because you never really know 100%. Oh, I'm definitely going to be successful. Right. But it is recognizing that where you are is no longer enough for you. And where you are is no longer a place that you can stay. And it's time to move on.
Wow.
So what were those what were those actionable steps after you made that realization, with your life to pursue that idea? You knew you made all the check boxes. You weren't going to make any more excuses. Like what are some actionable steps for that our audience can take away and begin that process within their journey?
One of the biggest things is recognizing. So we talked about like having the understanding, having the mindset shift, but there's also, okay, what is your vision? What's your plan? So I definitely believe in developing a plan of sorts, figuring out what does that look like? What is your ultimate objective? With market research, one of the first questions we ask when you're trying to answer a business question, what is your objective? Because you can go out and just start surveying people, but if you have no idea of what you're trying to learn and how you're going to leverage that information, you're just wasting time and money, right? And there's millions of questions that you can ask people that still don't answer the question that you're trying to get an answer for. So it's important to become very clear on what is your objective, what makes you, or not even what makes you, like if you're going to start a business, you have to think about the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I starting this business? Why do I want to get involved in this endeavor? Is it because of legacy? Is it because I just want to be my own boss? Is it because of money and what financial gains I can make? Is it because I want to some kind of way, maybe it's community engagement. I want to be involved in my community and this allows me to do that. Maybe it's for next generations, right? Like, and that's the legacy piece. Like maybe it's for other reasons, but you have to recognize what that reason is and what is your why, and be very clear on your why. I think a second thing, and also understanding how that why, if you have clarity on that, it really helps you down the line when you have to make big decisions. If your why is all about money, and it's really like, I am trying to get to a certain dollar amount. I want to retire about this age, or this is the lifestyle that I want to lead. Then when it comes down to developing your business, you should develop a business that's got a low cost strategy. Like it shouldn't be, hey, I'm going to be on Fiverr and I'm your business owner that pretty much is giving you everything for $5. That doesn't, unless, it doesn't really, that's not the aggressive strategy that you would have that fits with what you want to do ultimately. If it's all about, community building or community engagement, then there are certain opportunities that come that can either take you away from that or directly, be the antithesis of that. Then you would say, oh, well, I won't necessarily engage in that because that doesn't align with my vision and my ultimate objective. So I think one is being very clear on your objective and your whys. So I think and the second thing would be from a financial standpoint, or it would be financials, like understanding what I call, or what people call, the walkaway number. So knowing how much money you need in order to be able to walk away. Because again, let me take a step back. It's also knowing your fears. What are you concerned about? What is going to be the thing that keeps you from getting unstuck because you're so focused on it? So for me, I was leaving a certain comfort and stability. I didn't want to be broke. I didn't want to not have money. I didn't want to necessarily not be able to go grocery shopping when I wanted to. I didn't want to necessarily have to look at every price tag of everything I bought. And so I had to make some decisions and some sacrifices in terms of my walkaway number, and like deciding how I was going to spend money before I left corporate. And that also helped with the planning, knowing how much time I needed to leave. And I was already an aggressive saver. So fortunately, it wasn't like I was starting from the beginning when I decided to leave in 2014. But if I hadn't been, I would have definitely had to be even extremely aggressive to be able to leave and know I have, 6 months, a year, like depending on whatever your comfort level is, you need to have some money saved up to know that you can be able to live comfortably and be able to, depending on what kind of business, what kind of licenses, you got to start your LLC or your corporation. You're going to pay the Secretary of State. How much is that registration fee? Do you have to renew every year? It's just what other licenses do you need to be able to operate? So I think people knowing not only what bills need to be paid, where they're, light and water and just having a roof over their head and to eat and to have clothes, but also like all these other things that are now going to be expenses that you will incur because of your business. So that's the second thing, I think, is knowing your whys and having your mindset right. I think it's understanding your fears and figuring out what needs to happen in order to overcome them. And for me, it was knowing your walkaway number so that when you finally do leave, you've already recognized what will financially be put aside to help you or to enable you to be successful without the worry of money.
Yeah. You hit on a lot of things that I feel like entrepreneurs really either reflect on before they start the entrepreneurship journey or after, right? At what point did you say, like, there's an opportunity here and I'm going to try to see if I can service this opportunity? So
it was, that's a good question. So in 2013, MyndMatters was launched, right? But it was solely for my purposes. It wasn't until I'd actually already left corporate and was working on SIGHTSSET that I decided to start taking on clients for MyndMatters. So I'll say that first, just because that's an easier, straightforward story. So that one was in the fall of 2015 is when we actually started taking on clients, and we've been doing that since then. For SIGHTSSET, it was a little bit different. I recognized I was working in this role where I was doing research, and we were doing research in a different way. It was a way that was very efficient, and it was all about efficiency. It was all about high quality results in an efficient manner. And I had been in several roles. I've been in several both U.S. based roles as well as mostly global roles. I traveled doing a lot of research in different places. And when I was doing this in my final role, I started to think about like African Americans and Hispanics. I thought about a very specific community because we were doing research that was reaching a community, like I said, very efficiently at a low cost. And for most of the time when I had been working in my other roles, anytime we want to do research among this particular group, especially, and I'll focus on African Americans, especially African Americans, it was going to take longer time. Every agency told us it will take longer in terms of time, and it will cost you, twice the budget. So what they consider to be like a general market audience is majority white audience. And then you may have like, some Blacks, Hispanics, Asians in there, but it's largely white. That's kind of when they use the term general market, a lot of times they're just saying white audiences, but then you do things like you may have to specifically over-index or try to over-recruit to get Black people, Hispanics, like other subgroups. And so we would have to do a lot of research because I was working on projects that had a specific focus for African Americans and Hispanics. So anyway, when I was working on this project, I recognized, okay, why is it that when we're doing this highly efficient process, it's cost effective, this is great, we're able to get great learning, like within a couple of days, why can't this be done when it comes to these African American populations? Like, just to be very frank, Black people like giving their opinions too. Black. I was thinking,
all you gotta do is jump on Twitter.
I'm like, Black Twitter exists. Like I'm just sitting there as a millennial, like I'm sitting in this office thinking, I have plenty of friends and family that love telling me their opinion. Like they like talking about what they like and don't like. So why is it that it costs?
Barbershop.
Yeah, I'm like, thank you. Like, why is it that it costs so much more? And it's because a lot of those agencies and those suppliers, they don't have relationships within those communities. They don't really understand and always know those communities. And so when it comes to reaching those communities in an effective way, they're trying to use methods that may not always be geared towards them and methods that don't always address, their specific needs and some of their cultural needs. So I really thought about it, and then I had a friend, and this was a point that I didn't make earlier about the steps that you take. One of those steps is really deciding if you're going to do this alone or with somebody. Like, what is that? Are you going to have a partner? Are you going to go into this by yourself? And then there are a lot of questions to really think about and ask yourself, depending on the answer that you come back with. But I had a friend that worked, or an acquaintance that worked at the company, and we were doing very similar jobs and very similar roles. She had been very scrappy, and we'd always been talking about our desire to start a business. And like, that's not necessarily together, but just thinking about, what that looked like, leaving Ohio. And then we just had a conversation. It was actually on a double date. She and her husband were they were out on a date with Q and I, and in Ohio, and we just started talking. And then that's where the idea was really born. Like, I started telling her about a plan. And the original plan, the company has evolved since then. The original plan was to be able to have a process that allowed nonprofit organizations within African American communities, or that largely worked with African Americans, to be able to take those nonprofits and be able to use their members and the communities that they served as a way to recruit for research. So you have these large global companies, you have the Cokes, the Pepsis, the Kimberly-Clarks, the Procter & Gamble's, the Unilevers, like those companies are looking for feedback. So it was, why not be able to take churches? Why not be able to take all these organizations that are filling the community and be able to say, here's an opportunity for your patrons to be able to participate in research. They give their opinions, but they also are getting compensated for it. So the organization can get paid as a way for the organization to think about income, as well as the members and the community members to receive money and receive payment. And for the companies, it's happening the way we had built it up. It was going to happen in a very efficient manner. Like, they were going to be able to get feedback. It was more so like a early testing. It wasn't an in-depth quantitative review or anything. It was like early qual testing. But that was the original plan of SIGHTSSET. And that's what when we moved down to Atlanta in 2014, that was the plan. Unfortunately, what people will learn in entrepreneurship is that plan was really heavily contingent upon a lot of other factors. And one of them really being those organizations and those networks and those churches being responsive and them understanding the process and them wanting to get involved. And a lot of them are already inundated with requests and already overwhelmed. They're already understaffed. And so it became a challenge to see, it became a challenge for us when we were going into organizations and recognizing, wow, we're trying to give them money and they're not necessarily being as responsive as we thought they would be. And so we actually shifted the business a bit from there. But that was the original plan of SIGHTSSET, and that's how it came to be.
Man, there's like I want to go back and like start taking notes. I tell you, I mentioned this in the beginning. Like, she like wrote it out, made it plain and clear when I had that conversation with you earlier within the year. Yeah, our audience is going to appreciate that a lot. I want to dive in a little bit deeper with the time where now you have like MyndMatters going and you have SIGHTSSET going as well too. You got over like that first hump and you're starting to get clients, and you're in the early stage still, but I'm sure you are learning obstacles and challenges along the way until you can really feel like you had that traction and momentum within your business. What advice or what crafty skills or tactics did you have to use to overcome some of those earlier challenges?
So I'll tell you, some of the earlier things are within the first year or so, probably about 9 months in, my business partner for SIGHTSSET, decided like it wasn't necessarily our business partnership, but it was just, entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. And if you don't ask yourself the right questions at the beginning, you may realize halfway into it, oh, wow, you know what? I don't know if this is what I really am interested in or what I want to do. And so a couple of things happened. One,
The why and the motivation.
yeah, like it's that whys and the motivation question, those questions, right? And so one was she was having a conversation with herself, trying to figure out, do I want to stay in entrepreneurship, or do I want the stability and comfort of corporate? I kind of missed that stability, right? So that was one of the questions. Another thing is she was married. And so, because at the time we had that double date, they were just engaged. And so by this point they were married, and it was kind of, having that conversation with her husband about their shared dreams, and their shared dreams were different. They wanted to start this enterprise together and do something together. And they started it within a few months of us both moving down to Atlanta and starting SIGHTSSET. So now you have competing priorities. You have different things that you're trying to do because you want to make your household happy. And that's something that, you're interested in. But you also now have this commitment in your partnership with SIGHTSSET, that you're also trying to work on. And then a third thing that kind of happened was, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, the shifting objectives. So whereas we left Ohio with this idea of what the business would look like, within those first few months, starting to really have getting the reality of, this may not materialize what we thought. And now we have to kind of switch gears a little bit. And we're going to, now we're going to target these types of enterprises or these types of organizations. That's something that now you have to, it's almost like reevaluating, okay, well, is this what I was looking for? Is this what I want? How do I feel about this? And so there were different things that happened in terms of how the business evolved as well. So I think that was one of the challenges, and how I got over it was we had a very, very strong and very solid partnership agreement at the beginning. We had worked with an attorney, but we knew all the nooks and crannies. So that's something I would suggest and recommend. If you're going to go into a partnership, you're going to work with somebody else, have a very clearly written out agreement that makes it clear, how are you going to work, what shares each other has, like how do you manage meetings? If somebody decides to leave in a certain time period, what does that process look like? Do they have to give back any money to the business, or do they, can they just leave whenever they feel like it? Or do they have to give like a 60-day notice? Or how many days, if somebody gets sick, if they have a short-term, disability, like they're out for a certain number of days with a recurring illness, what does that look like? If somebody dies, unfortunately, like what is that process? And so we really went through every. And
you guys had that
at the beginning,
right before you actually started the
we had
company?
it. We had formed the LLC before we left Ohio, but as soon, because I moved down maybe a month before she did. And as soon as she got here, like before we took on our first client, before we really got into any of the actual business stuff, like operations, we sat down and like we went through this. And that was the first piece of business, was doing that and getting, because we knew we needed certain contracts, right? Because we knew if we're doing research, we need to have contracts for our clients. We need to have contracts for the participants. We need to have contracts for all types of things. And so that was one of the big contracts that we had at the top of our list. And that's the main one that we used our attorney for. So, yeah. So, the big, Ahmad, you were asking about, those advice and tactics to deal with some of the issues. That was one of the biggest issues, was really understanding how to manage dissolving a partnership. And so because we had set ourselves up for success at the beginning with the partnership agreement, it made it easier. It made it like she knew what time frame she needed to give to leave. We knew how the process was going to go. We knew what the finances looked like, and everything was very simple. And so we didn't have an emotional, a negative experience when it came down to it, because everything was already laid out.
That's awesome.
Another thing I would say is too, in the beginning, two things. One is how we had to shift our objective, or how we had to shift the positioning of our company. And it was really about listening to the audience, like listening to clients. So one of the things is we recognized that we were having a hard time getting organizations to really commit and getting them to understand what we were trying to do. And we also listened to when people were coming and knocking at our doors, who were, people that were trying to give us money. What were they trying to give us money for? And so when we really started paying attention and we recognized the needs of entrepreneurs, the needs of business owners, the gap that still existed in the market, we repositioned ourselves to be able to now address that and be a solution to their problems. And so that's one of the things we did in terms of just listening to the audience, being able to hear what they were telling us, being able to ask questions, understanding what problems do they have, what are people asking for when they come to us? You're a marketing company, you're a market research company. What all do you do? And then if we know we don't do some of those things, we recognize, okay, there's a gap. Maybe we need to start thinking about, does this make sense for us? Do we have the skill set? Do we have the knowledge base? Can we do this? And then the third thing was recognizing when a client isn't a good fit. So in the first year or so, you recognize that not every client is a good fit for you and your business and what you want your business to be. And being able to be comfortable and confident enough to just pull back, just recognize you know what, this is either send them somewhere else, have recommendations for them, or just being able to know early on, I had a few bumps with a couple of different clients. And it was mostly with, one of them was with publishing, one was with SIGHTSSET. And it was just recognizing I don't think this is going to be a productive relationship, because you can try as best as you can, but if it's a bad fit, it's just going to be a bad fit.
Man, this, you're it's like the next question I'm about to ask. You may I like Twitter, and I was stalking you on Twitter a little bit, but you made this tweet about execution is a people problem, not a strategy problem, and the way you talk about your businesses and your lessons learned, you definitely know how to execute, and you surrounded and made sure that the people component was intertwined within that process as well. And it shows, because today, you have some really between SIGHTSSET and MyndMatters, you have some really successful clients. I think Procter and Gamble is one of your clients with SIGHTSSET, Florida A&M, the Clayton County Library System. And even a 12-month client on retainer. That's some major accomplishments to have under your belt. What's up next with either SIGHTSSET or MyndMatters? What's on your roadmap for the future?
So a couple of thank you for the kind words as well. Let me acknowledge that. So some good things. So one of the things is with MyndMatters, of course, we're publishing more authors. So last year was a really good year for us. I actually had because we were just really opening up for our first full year to clients. I didn't know how things were going to go. I had a vision in mind. I had an objective in mind for the year of how many books we published, and we actually exceeded that and doubled that actually in terms of publishing clients that we got.
Nice. Congratulations.
So thank you. And so this year is going to be even bigger and better. We're just trying to go and make sure that we're supporting our clients and really addressing their concerns and their needs. So it's just more books that are coming and more genres. So I'm really excited about that. We actually have an innovation. So what I'm really trying to do is take the companies and think more about how do I, my ultimate vision is how do I get these companies and how do I get my passion and my training to work together in a way that uniquely offers a benefit to a particular industry or to a group of clients, right? And so what I'm trying to do is bridge the gap between the two, between publishing and between the work that I've done with SIGHTSSET and the work that I learned in the training that I received while I was working in corporate America. And so some of the big things that are going to come out of 2017 are all of that. That's really that. I'm not going to go into all the details about it, but I'll say we have some things that we're working on where it's really going to make my life a little bit easier because now I can bridge the gap a little bit between the two. But then also it should help in terms of our clients and their overall satisfaction, happiness. Then for SIGHTSSET is really, that's a big part of it. It's the thing that I'm talking about, that hybrid approach is really kind of the innovation, I guess, for both companies. So we'll continue to work on, work on SIGHTSSET. We'll continue to have our core group of clients. We have, more and more clients popping up every week. I think the biggest thing for me is hiring people and overcoming, when you're first starting out and you're working with yourself, and then you kind of start, maybe you bring on one more person or you're strategically partnering with people and, having consultants and outsourcing work. Now it gets to a point of really starting to think about employees and building your team and what does that look like and how do you develop your organization in a way that aligns with your values and your mission. That's the big thing is really, and I'm working on my own book. So I'm also working on my own, there's a second book in my novella series that I'm working on. I released 3 collections of poetry poetry last year. And so now I want to release a collection of essays this year. So I have some projects that I'm working on as well. And I'm doing more speaking.
Entrepreneur and author. And
Every day I'm
and
hustling.
wow.
I told you, like, it's that my mantra is like, I only know that I'm granted this time, this life, this moment. So I can sit back and keep saying, tomorrow, but tomorrow's not promised. I'm like, let me try to do this today.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. You guys are awesome. You guys are pulling all of this out of me. You guys are awesome.
No, I mean, I feel like obviously, you're obviously very passionate about what you do. And, one thing I could definitely tell about you is that you have a very clear vision about, what you're doing, where you want to go. And I truly admire that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So the next thing that we're going to do is go into the gem round. The gem round is where we actually...
Those were the moments where you
you got to see, you got to tell. I chuckled.
So essentially, the gem round is where we ask you just a couple of questions. They're kind of some very straightforward questions and they're kind of some oddball questions. And, you don't have to answer them any specific way. You just kind of hear the question and we just let you run with it. So the first question is for the gem round is, what are the top 3 tools you would have recommended to yourself when you first started working on your idea and your businesses?
The 3 tools that I should have had and I wish I could look back on and have. Definitely one would have been a bookkeeping and accounting tool, like a very clear guide to manage the finances and money. One would have been getting more comfortable with I think having something like a design tool or a graphic design tool early on, because it became very important and useful. And that's like Canva or something like that. I mean, there's so many tools out there, but that was a great one. And then some like using a survey tool. So we use a specific survey tool now, but for me it was, especially with SIGHTSSET, like having a survey tool that can be used not just for the actual research purposes and what we do with clients, but I mean, for all entrepreneurs out there that are starting a business, it's a feedback loop. So every time you want people that sign up through your email list. You want people that after they purchase from you, you're able to send an email to them that has a survey link to ask them, about their satisfaction or find out what was the process like, or, are they going to recommend you to a friend? And then after they get the product or service, how do they feel about it? And then, so keep looping back with them. So if that's a huge one, I think that probably should have been listed first. Well, no, maybe after the money one. So financial accounting, some kind of bookkeeping tool, a feedback loop, some kind of surveying tool, just for CRM purposes. And then type of design tools I think were important that I didn't have a good handle on at the beginning. And it became something I realized more and more I needed.
Man, yeah. All right. We're going to link all of that in the show notes because those would be good takeaways. Our next question, Renita, is what do you do to keep sane?
Listen to that gangster rap. I know, hey, sometimes it helps. No, it's, what, I have a good support system. I mean, I could say pray, but I don't necessarily think the praying is just to keep me sane, right? Because I think that's an easy way to answer it, but it isn't always what I do just to not lose my cool. I don't know. Sometimes it's just, I think about the consequence of not being sane. So to be honest, I think it's more of like negative reinforcement or so, or however it works, where I know the consequence. So if I go off on somebody, or I just lose my temper, or I just go crazy or whatever, there's a consequence to it. So I think that's not going to work for me. So it's just, I don't know. I'm pretty even key. I think the first answer is the best one. I listen to gangster rap. That's it.
I love it. Okay. Throw some Young Thug in there.
I mean, thugga. I also try to exercise. So one of the things, I guess when I think about it, I try to go to the gym 4 days a week. So, and I start my mornings off with exercise. Like I try to jog just to clear my head. It gives me high energy. I feel good, But that's probably like the sanity, or kind of keeping certain things from me. When I write, writing helps keep me balanced. It helps keep me focused. Every time I look at the spine of a book and it has the MyndMatters imprint on it, it keeps me sane. Like knowing that I am involved in people's future. And every time somebody looks at their first book, that's been one of our new author clients, I'm like, wow, I was a part of that part of their lives. Like me specifically in my company was a part of that for them. So, I mean, when you have that, that's a blessing,
That's definitely gotta be pretty powerful to help somebody achieve their own dream, right? That's probably one of the greatest gifts anybody can have, helping somebody achieve their own dream.
Yeah, it's like how do you go sane with that? Like, how do I go insane when that's the blessing? Like that is a part of my actual life. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. That actually leads into our next question. And you can't say yours, so I'm just gonna say that first.
Okay.
But what is your favorite business book?
Oh, it has to be a business book.
If you have a favorite business book.
It's funny because my favorite business book isn't an actual business book. My favorite book is The Alchemist, and to me, it is a business book.
Oh my God, I love
Yeah, see, I'm like, to me, because it's funny because I think business books sometimes overreach. I'm not saying that there aren't some great ones out there. I mean, there are plenty of great books out there that specifically focus on a topic of business or a certain aspect of business, or even overall, hey, how to be a great entrepreneur, how to, all this stuff. But it's funny because to me, the most inspiring book, the book that I think an entrepreneur or a wannapreneur should probably pick up and really walk through is something like The Alchemist, where you really think about your life. You really think about being in that China shop and where you've been in a position that somebody says, oh, you're really good at this. Like, I'm sorry, I'm getting into the story a little bit if you've ever read it, but it's like you can be in a moment in time, just like we were talking about being at corporate or being at these jobs, and you're doing something and you're getting accolades and people are saying you're great and your family is bragging, but you realize like you were supposed to only be there for a day and you've been there for 2 years. And you know what I mean? And that's the thing, like, and then it all of a sudden hits you and something happens. And you realize, wow, my dream, like this wasn't my objective. This wasn't my goal. This isn't why I'm on this journey. And so, and there's that part, and there are so many moments in the book where, your eyes are open. And to me, that's just a really good one. It talks a lot about having vision, understanding your objective. It talks about like not overlooking what's right in front of you. It talks a lot about collaboration. Like those key points, empathy, key things that are very important in business. I feel like I got a lot of those by reading a fiction like novel. You know what I mean? So, I love The Alchemist, and I always tell people to read it.
That's definitely one of my favorite books as well. I mean, whenever somebody asks me what book should I read, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, my first recommendation is always The Alchemist.
Perfect. Oh, see, we're on the same page.
I haven't read it yet, guys. It's on my list. But it reminds me of thinking.
I'm surprised you haven't read that. Honestly, I feel like just knowing you, I'm surprised you haven't read that yet.
Yeah, and most of his, I've read most of his books, but yeah, you got to read that one, Ahmad. We're going to judge you. I know. Like, we're already judging you a little bit.
Well, let's transition to the last question of the gym round. Because I don't like this judgment. The last question, and this like, hopefully it doesn't stump you, but it really does make people pause whenever we ask this question. What is something that you do not want an app to replace?
Well, I guess for me, it's a little bit, can I say it for both businesses? For SIGHTSSET, I think it would be, I don't want an app to try to tell me or businesses what an actual human person believes, thinks, feels, or wants, right? I think data can tell you that, but it's all based on somebody having to fill out a survey or telling you that. I think I don't want an algorithm necessarily put in, and so people have to stop asking consumers or stop asking the masses like what they actually want, because I think it's important to hear that. I think hearing their voices, light up, or you hear their tone changes, I think it's important. So I wouldn't want an app to replace the actual human interaction of qualitative interviews. I wouldn't want an app to replace, of course, this is simple. I don't know if an app could do it, but I don't want an app to necessarily replace people writing stories. Just the human brain being able, some of the stuff I've written in a book, I've read in a book is amazing, that people can come up with it and people can put a story together like that. I don't know if it'll be possible, but I definitely wouldn't want, technology to change that. I want humans to keep telling those stories.
So we're wrapping, we're towards the end of the interview, and we appreciate you coming on our show. You dropped some really, really great information. We appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm sure anybody that listens to this particular episode is definitely going to be inspired. What are there any specific ways that people can contact you, whether it's like through social media or email? Definitely feel free to go ahead and the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, so you can, Ahmad mentioned our Twitter and everything. You can also find us on Facebook at SIGHTSSET Consulting. That's 2 S's in the middle, no S on the end of sets or set. So at SIGHTSSET Consulting or at MyndMatters Publishing is MYND. Or www.myndmatterspublishing.com, www.sightset.com. And for email, if they're trying to contact us for publishing, it's info@myndmatterspublishing.com. And for SIGHTSET, it is contact us at sightset.com. So a lot of information right there. The best place to go to would be our websites. They can contact us and get all of our social media links from there.
Yeah, and if anybody's looking to publish, I think you guys just put out a free publishing guide as well too, and we're going to include all that contact information and links to the website, Twitter on the show notes as well.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Renita, thank you again so much for sharing your story. We really do appreciate it, and our listeners they have a lot of gems to take away from this episode and help them, get out of that idea stage and into some execution.
Thank you. I'm glad. I'm hoping it was valuable.
Oh, definitely. Well, thanks again, and that's it for this.